chanting Om first, and then we'll move into this mantra together. This mantra frames our intention for our time this evening. Sing this 3 times all together. You can hum or just listen if it's new. Sarve bhavantu sukhinah, sarve santu niramaya, sarve bhadrani pashyantu, ma kasched dukkha bhag bhavet, sarve bhavantu sukhinah, sarve santu niramaya, sarve bhadrani pashyantu, ma kasched dukkha bhag bhavet, sarve bhavantu sukhinah, sarve santu niramaya, sarve bhadrani pashyantu, ma kasched dukkha bhag bhavet. Let's sit in the vibration of this mantra. Very short, few minutes here. Using this time to come back into your full self. Letting your senses become more in tune with your internal landscape, with the space we're creating together. Your energy is not being pulled to the people or activities of your day. Practice of being present in time and space, present within your body. there's tension here and slowing down, use your breath. Deep breath, you can direct the breath down into the lowest part of your ribs, your lungs down into your belly. Relaxing the legs, the hips, stomach. Grounding and connecting to the energy of earth. Slowly begin. Lift the gaze. Slowly open the eyes if they're closed. And we'll just take our time coming back into our computer screens, to the space we're sharing together.
Thank you, Sarah. Can everyone hear me okay? Okay. Thank you. So tonight, this first evening of the focus on this book, The Heroic Heart, by Jetsunma Tenzin Palmo, will be a little bit different than the remaining 37 weeks. Because I thought it would be nice to take this opportunity to kind of familiarize you guys with the author and the text that she is authoring or commenting on. So we're gonna actually, I found a video of an interview that she granted where she talks specifically about this book. And so we're gonna use a few clips from that video tonight and kind of use that to help familiarize us with what we're about to do. So to kick it off, I just wanted to read actually the first page from the introduction of the book, The Heroic Heart. And if you don't have the book yet, that's fine. It'd be great if you get it this week if you want to continue with the series. So the book kicks off with this quote from the Buddha. All experiences are preceded by mind, have mind as their master, are created by mind. And this is like really hitting on and establishing a firmly grounded tenet of Buddhism and the Buddhist practice, Buddhist system, that everything comes from our mind. And so the work that we do to understand, to familiarize ourselves with, to work with, to befriend, and partner with our own mind is the most important thing that we can do. And so there are mind trainings that help us to do that. And that's what this is all about, like training the mind and ways that we can train the mind in our everyday life. So it's a very practical, and that's one of the reasons I wanted to use this. I also wanted to use this particular commentary because this nun, she's such a magnanimous, interesting, intriguing figure. I first learned about her a few years ago when someone mentioned to me that there was this nun who had lived for 12 years in a cave, a very small cave, doing traditional Tibetan Buddhist retreat, where you just go in to full-on practice. It's a solitude, a practice of solitude, and it's pretty, it's intense. And she did this for 12 years. And not only did she do it for 12 years, but she lived in this little cave on the side of a mountain. And I was like, well, I mean, that's pretty impressive. And so there's a book called The Cave in the Snow. And Cave in the Snow is about her and about these 12 years. So it's a really great book. I recommend that one as well. So that really kind of turned me on to this nun. And then when I heard about this book, The Heroic Heart, it really hit home because I had just completed a course the summer of 2022, on the 37 practices of a Bodhisattva. And that's what this commentary is on, this ancient text about the 37 practices of a Bodhisattva, which is incredibly useful because it hits on the challenges that we face in our life day to day, like the actual things that happen to us that can really trip us up and cause us to become angry, to become spiteful, to become greedy, all these different things that can really get in the way of pursuing any sort of spiritual path. And so I chose her commentary because she's super down to earth and just very upfront, very practical, very funny about how she speaks to these practices. So the book, in this very first page, she says, the quote above by the Buddha himself demonstrates that our minds and the way we use them, how we think, are central to the Buddhist path. Therefore, a method for taming or calming the mind, a way of training it out of its many negative habits, is both crucial and beneficial. Why is it so important to train and tame the mind? Why is it imperative to release the mind from its habitual patterns and uncover its true nature? Because a wild mind tends to harm others. Very simple. Because a wild mind tends to harm others. This brings us to the true heart of Buddhism, the liberation of all sentient beings from all forms of suffering. Although we Buddhists talk about realization and enlightenment a lot, that is not our true goal. Our true goal is to free sentient beings from suffering, to free them also from delusion and ignorance of their true nature. Our own enlightenment is the best and surest way to equip us to do that. It is this cherishing of others that is the essence of Buddhism. From the simplest foundational practices to the heights of Mahamudra and Dzogchen, which are kind of high-level Tibetan Buddhist practices, nothing is more important or higher than the selfless expression of boundless compassion, or bodhicitta. Training and taming the mind is the way we give rise to this boundless compassion and the way we are ultimately able to express our true nature. Okay, so that's what this is about. Coming from the 37 practices of a bodhisattva, which were composed in the 14th century by a very astute monk named Tongme Sangpo. So these 37 practices are then what form the sort of foundation for this book, The Heroic Heart, and then her commentary is what kind of elaborates. I also wanted to just share with you her bio, just kind of a little bit about who this nun is. And Sarah, while I'm doing that, maybe you could go ahead and cue up the first video segment. Okay, so just about the author, Jetsunma Tenzin Palmo was born in England in 1943. So she's a white lady from the UK. She's a fully ordained nun or bhikshuni in the Drukpa lineage of the Kagyu school of Tibetan Buddhism. She is an author, a teacher, and a founder of the Dongyu Gotsal Ling Nunnery in Himachal Pradesh, India. This is a big nunnery that she is head of. She is renowned for being one of the few Western-born practitioners fully trained in the East, having spent 12 years living in a remote cave in the Himalayas, 3 of those years in strict meditation retreat. Jetsunma's heart teacher was the 8th Kamtrul Rinpoche, Dongyu Nyingma, who reestablished the Kampakar lineage and monastery in northern India after the destruction of the original during the Chinese invasion and occupation of Tibet. The title of Jetsunma, which means revered lady, was bestowed on her by the head of the Drukpa lineage, the 12th Gyalwang Drukpa, in recognition of her spiritual achievements as a nun and her efforts in promoting the status of female practitioners in Tibetan Buddhism. No other Westerner has been formally granted a title of such high esteem. And one thing about her that I think you all will appreciate is that she has pushed and worked very hard to get equality with regard to the recognition of female Tibetan Buddhist practitioners as nuns in the tradition. So she's really been leading the way on that and has made huge progress in getting that sort of equal recognition. All right, so this first clip that we're going to watch is kind of setting the stage. So Sarah, if you want to go ahead and start that. Uh-oh, I'm not hearing the audio. Sometimes it does funky things. Hold on, folks. So in this first clip, she's going to be talking about how we take difficult situations onto the path, like turn them into opportunities for practice, which is really the crux of the book.
He emphasized very much also the qualities of bringing difficulties and difficult people, difficult situations, obstacles that we come across in our everyday lives, how to make use of all these difficult situations to enhance the path. Rather than seeing them as obstacles, we see them as opportunities. So he began this teaching on how to bring all situations onto the path, onto the spiritual path. And from him radiated many disciples, and they formed a tradition called the Kadampa. And so Tomi Zampo was one of those who came, a few centuries later, but with the same emphasis. I mean, this 37 practices of Bodhisattva is concerned with how to take everything, your difficulties as well as good times, everything, and make use of it on the path. This is why it's so useful for our everyday life now, because most people, are not spending their lives in monasteries, but they are sincere people. They want to practice, right? I mean, in the West and in Asia, nowadays people are highly educated, but they have professions, they have families, they have social life, and they also want to bring a spiritual dimension into their lives. So they're not going to spend their time always in formal meditation in retreat, but they want to make use of their daily life, right? To prevent their lives from such being meaningless, secular occupations. They want to integrate the spiritual into their daily lives, make meaning out of their daily lives. So these teachings are extremely practical. And even though they were delivered now in the 14th century, they are as applicable today as, centuries before. This is why now more and more people are beginning to recognize how extraordinarily useful these teachings are. And because they're in verses, you can take just one verse and really sit and think about it, right? How I can apply this to my life.
She's hitting on here the incredible utility of this mind training and these mind trainings. Like, it gives us the opportunity to take practice literally off the cushion, off the mat, into our life. And not only that, but actually the things that we encounter in our everyday life, in particular the things that are challenging, the things that are difficult, become the most valuable opportunities for practice. And so you're going to see, as we move through each section, each week, it's like it's giving you examples of things that you might otherwise not recognize as opportunities for practice, and begin to see them that way. And in doing so, we can start to transform these situations, not only into opportunities for our own development, but opportunities to support others, to grant grace to others, to make life easier for ourselves and others. Okay, so one things to think about here at this juncture, it's just like, even in your daily life, like, have you encountered a difficult situation today? Like, what was something in your life, maybe today or the past few days, that you've encountered that was challenging, and how you might take that situation to the path. And those are the answers that we're going to start to unravel, that we're going to focus in on. Okay. So in this next section, Sarah, you can go ahead and start to cue it up. She's going to be getting into what she calls the two wings of practice: compassion and wisdom. And these are, they have much more expansive meanings than what we tend to think of in the West when we just go look up the words wisdom and compassion. So you'll start to see that as well.
Yes, wisdom and compassion are regarded as the two wings of the bird to fly towards enlightenment. If we only have lots and lots of compassion but no wisdom, then eventually we're likely to burn out, or to be very, very kind, very, very compassionate, but not seeing the whole situation clearly, and therefore messing it up, even though we had good intentions, right? Lots of people have good intentions, but end up really creating more problems. Why? Because they lack wisdom. They lack the clear insight to see things how they really are, and in that way make informed decisions about how to help. If we only have wisdom and we don't have compassion, then it becomes quite cold, it becomes quite analytical. We see the situation very clearly, but we have no empathy. And in that way, likewise, we fail in our potential as human beings. It is regarded that the enlightened state is the fullness of our wisdom and compassion. The two of them are two sides of the same coin. So if we have wisdom, we can activate our compassion If we have compassion, we see clearly and therefore bring into being wisdom. So the two are the two sides of the same coin, and they're very important. As I say, they're like the wings. One wing, we'll just circle round and round and round. But with two wings, then we can fly upwards. So that's why in Buddhism, these two qualities of clear insight into the nature of reality, along with the great empathy of understanding the underlying suffering of all of us, because we do not see clearly, and therefore we do suffer. We just don't know what we're doing, and therefore we create problems for ourselves, we create problems for others, and look what we're doing to the world. It's all based on our ignorance and lack of empathy. So this is why we are destroying ourselves, destroying others, destroying the whole planet. So we need to develop these two qualities equally.
Okay. Are there any questions or anything at this point? Is everybody, the information coming through clearly? Doing all right? You know, it's really important, like this thing that you mentioned about burnout. There's been this thing that's gone around in the past few years about compassion burnout, and that's kind of, from a Buddhist standpoint, nonsense, because if you are balancing these two wings of the bird, then the burnout won't come, because part of it is recognizing like the broad view, the full picture, as she was mentioning, and that our intention is super important, but recognizing that we aren't always able to do anything in the moment, that we have to be able to step back and look at the bigger picture and accept things as they are. It's this broader view of our existence, even, that can become very important here. You know, the perspective of multiple lifetimes, for example, and so that is something that's going to come up again and again. It's like balancing these aspects of compassion and wisdom with a realistic view of the world. All right. In the next section, she's getting into challenges and adversities that we face. Sarah, you can go ahead and bring that up, and how we can turn those into opportunities.
Well, yeah, sometimes I say it's like a spiritual gymnasium. If we go to a gym, then, you know, the trainer will look at us and say, well, you know, maybe your arms are okay, but your legs are really flabby, and put us on a machine which will challenge our legs, right? I mean, we don't just, if it's too easy, then we'll tone it up a bit, so that, you go to the gymnasiums, they have these big, I can't understand it, these big glass, you know, that everybody can look in and see the people training inside, and they'll, right? You know, I mean, they're paying for this. And at the end, they come off and they feel great. And their legs, you know, get toned up, they get muscled, they feel wonderful, they feel so much better. And they're grateful to the machines for testing them and challenging them, right? So in a way, we can consider life to be our spiritual gymnasium. right? It's challenging us. If it's too easy, we can float along, but we get very inwardly flabby, right? Thinking we're ever so much nicer than we actually are, because nothing has ever challenged that. And so therefore, in that way, we can look at the difficulties and problems which we do face in life to recognize that this is strengthening our character. This is bringing out qualities in us, which otherwise would never be recognized, which would never otherwise be needed. So in that way, we begin to recognize that even the difficulties of life, sickness, loss, people doing bad things, it's not that we go out to find them, but when they come, we can make use of them. Instead of being angry, depressed, resentful, we can say, this is my challenge now. How can I respond to this situation in a way which will transform it from an obstacle into a spiritual opportunity? For example, if one of the qualities needed on the path spiritually is patience, tolerance, forbearance. Well, we need things and people who, push our buttons in order to develop these qualities, right? I mean, I always say it's very easy to be loving to people who are lovable. That doesn't require any particular qualities of our nature. Naturally, we're nice to people who are nice. But the thing is, how do we respond to people who are not nice? People who really, cause us a lot of trouble and a lot of problems. Well, either we can be very angry and upset and want revenge or whatever, or we can say, well, these people are here to teach me patience and forbearance. So far from resenting them, we can be grateful and see them. I mean, in the text, it says, we see them as our spiritual teachers. We even maybe put them on the top of our head out of respect. Because why? They are teaching us this very, very important quality of forbearance, tolerance, and patience. So in this way, there are many, many different techniques for taking difficult things which we would normally regard as being hopelessly painful and using them instead as a great spiritual impetus to develop ourselves and to cultivate the qualities of the heart which need to have opposition in order to flourish. So this is what the text is all about. It's about taking all the things which normally would cause us to be very upset and depressed and angry, and just turning the whole picture around and feeling grateful for this opportunity to spiritually develop.
Isn't that interesting? She said, I need to have opposition in order to flourish. And like using the example of the weight machine or the treadmill, like we know, like for the body, that if we want it to build muscle, we have to challenge it, right? And a lot of times we don't think of the mind and the mind as like a muscle and like working it the same way, but we can. And it's incredible to have this guidance. And then it just reminded me, like going right back to that very first quote from the Buddha: all experiences are preceded by mind, have mind as their master, are created by mind. So much of this comes down to how we use our mind, how we perceive, and whether we step in and like play a role in our perception, instead of just letting things come at us and thinking of it that way, like they're coming at us. It's about stepping up and taking an active role. And, she mentioned the obstacles, the hindrances. And of course, in the yoga world, we're very accustomed to this word klesha and the 5 kleshas, asmita, avidya, asmita, raga, devesha, abhinivesha. And those apply here. And more, like they can be flushed out even further. But these kleshas, these obstacles, don't have to be just looked at as bad things, right? They can be looked at, and that's what we're talking about here. It's like taking those things. These are experiences that we're gonna have, that we all have. They're universal human experiences, but we can take them and transform them from being quote unquote bad things or negative emotions to opportunities to transform, to grow, to look at them differently, and to use them for our spiritual path. So that's what this is all about. And we have this one last clip that I wanted to share with you guys before we do a little meditation. And this one is particularly good. She's talking about turning offense, being offended, into an opportunity. So Sarah, if you want to go ahead and put that one up.
Can I say something quickly before we watch this
Yeah.
last one?
Yeah.
I was struck at the beginning when you were reading the introduction, for some reason, by the use of the word mind over and over again. And I think it's because that makes me feel like the practice is here in my head, as opposed to my whole body, right? Or my whole being. And I wanted to share this in case, people that haven't been with us for the last year or so on Mondays. The way that we're working through these teachings, I mean, Corey said all of this, but it really supports how we're living, because for me, it's helped to see where I have patterns that have been conditioned by my experiences in life, the things that make me anxious or afraid. Like that perspective that Corey's talking about is being able to see when this habit, this cycle you're in, is not reality. It's your cycle, your pattern. And because of that, it affects our perception of life, of a person. And all of these things that we're reading and teaching, it's like almost like untying a knot. It's helping to pull these things out, not only so that we can see things more clearly, have that perspective from a wisdom standpoint, but to start to unravel the patterns, the behaviors that until you look at them clearly, you can't really control an old response, this old pattern behavior in our nervous system. Like, we have to look at it in order to change it. And for me, a lot of these teachings and this work has helped to do that. So it really does affect your quality of life, like how content you are and happy you are, and then how much you have to give to other people because of that. So I just want to share that. It
Awesome.
feels beyond
Thank
the
you.
mind to me.
Yeah. Mind in a very expansive capacity.
Yeah. Okay, here we go.
Embodied. Okay.
Last clip.
You mentioned the importance to treat difficult interpersonal situations as learning opportunities. We are interested in difficult intercultural situations. We wrote an article on preparing to be offended by representatives of an organization called The Cultural Other. Our question is, how can Buddhist teachings help people prepare to be offended and to learn from such experiences instead of pulling back, feeling hurt?
Well, I mean, one thing I think we have to remember is that when other people are, racist or aggressive or in any way offensive, it's because they themselves have problems. If we were really at peace within ourselves, we would give peace to others. I mean, anybody who has this very aggressive response to others, and seeing them as something alien and therefore in some ways threatening, have problems themselves, you know. So then how sad. Would we want their mind? This is the thing to ask ourselves. Would we want a mind which responds to others in the way that they respond to others? And we would think, no, we would hate to have a mind like that. How sad that they are trapped in that kind of narrow, biased, racist, or offensive kind of mind. I mean, that is for them very painful. They don't realize it, but actually it's not a happy state of mind. And in addition, at least from a spiritual point of view, they're making very bad karma. So in this lifetime, maybe they get away with it, but next lifetime, who knows where they're going to, what situation they're going to find themselves in, as the dark seeds which they have been sowing come up into harvest. So, instead of feeling offended, we can feel great compassion because they're obviously very screwed up. And at the same time, we can take it as an opportunity to, as I say, cultivate forbearance and tolerance, which is a very important spiritual quality which we do need and which we won't be able to cultivate if people, don't do things which cause us offense. So at the same time, when these feelings of feeling offended come up, we can recognize that and say, feeling offended, angry, hurt. And by looking at that feeling as it comes up and labeling it, we are able then to take control of that feeling and to transform it into a more positive feeling, recognizing that that feeling is a negative feeling and hurts us more than it hurts the other person. And so that's not very helpful. But first we have to recognize that we do feel, we can't pretend I don't feel offended or I don't feel angry. That is just suppression. So we allow the feeling to come up, but we recognize it when it comes up. We don't feed it, sort of get swept away by it. When it comes up, we look at it, we see it, we can say, this is anger, this is hurt, this is wanting revenge. But then seeing that is a very negative response, which will not bring any good to ourselves or to others, we then have the opportunity to say, this is a time when I will transform that negative into something more positive. And this is how we advance on the path. And this is how we cultivate the qualities. Back to the gym, working out hard on the machine, right? It might be painful at the time, but in the end, we end up with a lot of strength. So, in that way, you could feel almost grateful for people who are being offensive because they're helping us to cultivate our forbearance and tolerance and compassion.
Isn't that fascinating to think like we're being grateful that you were offended? Think about it though. If you never had the experience at all, then you don't have the opportunity to manage that, to deal with that, to grow in a way. So we can have these experiences and they can beat us down, they can make us hateful, they can make us spiteful, all these things. Or we can have these experiences and actually sit with it and kind of go down into it and figure out where is it coming from and how do I, how am I seeing this? How are they seeing this? Where, it's a really fascinating process, and it's all coming to this word transformation. It's been coming up again and again, and we hear it a lot in the yoga world too. But I feel like this actually takes that and makes it very tangible. You can actually start to see how this transformation can happen and how you can own it. You can play an active role in these transformations that we so actively, embrace. It's like, or talk about, but like to really bring into our lives and into our practice. Not that it's just happening because we're doing asana, for example. I mean, there are transformations that happen because of that. And some of those are like passive almost. But this is like an active form of practice that results in transformation of situations, emotions, thoughts, patterns that are otherwise negative, detrimental, harmful, and takes them and can turn them into something positive, or at least less negative. All right. So it's already 6:18. Anybody have any? Actually, let's go ahead and just do a meditation, and then we'll come back and chat for a bit before we close out at the end. So go ahead and get into a meditation seat. And we generally start our meditations with an invocation that comes from the Theravada tradition of Mingyur Rinpoche. And you're welcome to repeat after me if you'd like. It's a way of cultivating our intention, our motivation for practice. With boundless compassion and wisdom, I will work for the welfare of all. May we be free from hunger and discord, and have joy and a world at peace. And then with that, you can just rest your hands down in your lap or on your knees. Bring a bit of length up your spine, relax your shoulders, drop your chin. Maybe close your eyes or just let the eyes soften and the gaze drop down beyond the tip of the nose. And take a couple of deeper breaths just to kind of help clear your mind, clear your body, drop into your body and down to the earth. We've done a lot of listening. A common technique that we use in the Buddhist tradition is to listen, contemplate, and meditate. So there may still be some contemplation happening in your mind, and that's okay. Kind of begin to observe, allow, and gradually begin to take a less active role in the contemplation. Just allowing the thoughts to kind of come and go, dissolving. Allowing your breath to just be natural. Letting go of expectations. One of the biggest favors we can do ourselves when we meditate is to allow things to be as they are and just sit with it. approaching the situation more gently. Things might become more open and free. Easy. Easeful. Noticing your breath as it moves in and out of your body. Noticing any thoughts or feelings, emotions that might arise. No need to change anything or solve anything. And just giving a little time and space here for spaciousness, processing. Every experience we have, somehow part of us. And how might this experience be part of you? Now go ahead and just bring your hands together and we'll dedicate this practice. Dedicating is a way of offering up this good energy, goodwill that we've generated for the benefit of all beings, universally, impartially. You can repeat after me if you'd like. By the power of this compassionate practice, may suffering be transformed into peace. May the hearts of all beings be open. and their wisdom radiate from within. Right. So going forward, we'll slow it down. We'll have more time for discussion. And each week, we're just going to focus on the one sutra and the commentary that supports it. And the chapters are pretty short. So how this would work best is if you read just the chapter that we're like next week, we'll do chapter 1. So just read that at some point during the week, maybe even a couple times before our session next Monday. And during the session, we'll focus on that reading and kind of go through it a little bit. I'll give some comments. We'll talk, discuss, and share. And then the idea is that we'll meditate on it, specifically each one. And then the idea is that we take that into the week and kind of look for opportunities to use the practice, to use the mind training that we'll be focusing on each week. And then when we come back the following week, we can start off with kind of just a check-in to see if anybody has anything to share about how that worked out for them. And that the sharing can be very helpful. We've been, as Sarah alluded to, like we've been doing these Monday nights for quite some time now. And a few of you have been there for almost all of those. And the more you come, I think the more you get out of it, So I hope you'll keep coming and just set this time aside each week, just to plug in and come together. I wanted to read one last thing before we sign off today, and this is the actual book that was the book for my course a couple summers ago, called Illuminating the 37 Practices of a Bodhisattva. There's this one little paragraph that I wanted to read because it really hit me. Let's see. Okay. And this paragraph was actually written by my heart guru, Chokye Nyima Rinpoche, who is the Lama that I took refuge with a few years ago. So he wrote, "It is said that the Buddha, our teacher, has purified all negativity and perfected the potential for all positive qualities." So when we take refuge, for example, that's what we're thinking of. Not like as the Buddha as like God or some infallible being. It's not that. So we're taking refuge in the qualities that he represents, that the Buddha represents. Purified all negativity and perfected the potential for all positive qualities. What does that mean? To begin with, this statement makes us aware that Buddha is not some type of Superman or extraterrestrial alien that just appeared on this earth endowed with superhuman qualities. We all possess the same potential that Buddha possessed before becoming enlightened. We all possess that. Yet those positive qualities can only appear when the negative ones that cover them are eliminated. The Dharma, the teachings given by the Buddha, are based on his own personal experience and are concerned with nothing else than making our inherent positive qualities evident and our negative habitual tendencies diminish. The Dharma can provide us skillfully, or can guide us skillfully on a spiritual journey where we discover our real potential, previously unknown to us, and attain the same enlightened state as the Buddha himself. So that's what things that I find really inspiring, is that those are the teachings of Buddha. It's all right within each and every one of us, and we all have the potential to experience it. That's pretty cool. All right. Any questions or anything before we sign off? Everybody good? Thanks so much for being here. Good to see you, Azalea, and Annie, and Jeremy. I'm glad you signed on. Good to see you. All right. Thanks, everybody.
Bye. Thank you.
Thanks, Corey.
Lauren, thank you. Good night.
Thank you, Corey.
Bye, Bea. You're welcome.
See you mañana.
Okie doke.
Few
Good
hours.
night, everyone.
Good night.
Thanks, Susan.
Bye.
Bye,
Good
Sarah.
night.
Good night.